It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is my friend Eugene Luning, and we're going to be talking about his brand new book called The Moments with Jesus Encounter Bible 20 Immersive Stories from the Four Gospels. Eugene, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
Sean, I'm so excited to be with you. Great to see you again.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful to see you again. We actually got to meet in person, which isn't always the case for guests that I have on the podcast. But this has been a fun journey for this project. We've partnered with Bethel and Bill Johnson, so we got to meet up in Colorado with Bill and you and Christian Raffetto on my team, who have all been kind of spearheading this. And so it's wonderful to finally see this come to life. I was fascinating to watch we have a Skype chat stream amongst all of the acquisitions and salespeople, and everybody was leaving a comment. Oh, I got my Moments with Jesus Encounter Bible, and everybody was so excited because we were exciting too, but just excited because we'd seen samples where we'd seen kind of a partial version of it, but we'd never seen the full until last week, and so it was fun to finally behold this project we've been hearing so much about. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but before we get into that, I'd love to hear a bit of your origin story. I know a lot of my audience is going to be meeting you for the first time, so tell us a few things we need to know about you.
Absolutely. I am from the Midwest, grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Part of my faith background is the fact that my father was Catholic. My mother was a Presbyterian. So I kind of grew up in two different parts of sort of the church body. Had some wonderful mentors growing up who made me just fall in love with Jesus, just watching their lives. Ended up going to Westmont College in Santa Barbara, California, a Christian liberal arts college. And during those 4 years, lost my father very suddenly, which drew me into a whole other group of people, these wonderful people tied into Young Life, which is a big non-denominational ministry. They just loved me, kind of walked with me with the Lord through that loss. So that became part of my story, was just being part of Young Life, reaching out to teenagers who had no idea about Jesus, which is part of how I sort of learned to maybe speak the way that this book is written in. Met Jenny after college. In about 2009, we had our first significant encounter with the Holy Spirit, and that really became sort of the third part. So I'd seen sort of Catholicism, kind of mainline evangelicalism, and then I started to experience the ways of the Spirit kind of late 2000s. So it's been quite a journey with the Lord throughout my life, and here we are today, still trying to meet him every day. So it's been a wonderful journey.
And the rest, as they say, is history. No, I appreciate you giving us an overview of your background. Next, I'd love to get into the story behind the book. And we were just at a writers' conference actually in Reading in partnership with Bethel. And one of the really interesting thing is probably 40 to 50% of the questions we got, they were all around children's books, which was kind of a surprise to see. And it was a large group. It was like 200 plus people, just all, in the Q&A, children's books, children's books, children's books. And one of the things, just on a brief commentary perspective, one of the things people don't realize is kids' books are actually a lot more complicated to put together in terms of a tradition, in comparison to a traditional book. Because it seems like, it should be easy. There's hardly any text in a children's book by comparison, but you have to find an illustrator. You might be doing different treatments. For instance, this is a hardcover. You're going to have to do 4-color printing, so you're probably going to have to print them overseas to keep costs down. So kids' books is a whole new adventure compared to traditional adult nonfiction. And I've just been enjoying the journey. Really, the last 2.5 years, Destiny Image Kids is coming to its own. We're seeing more and more projects every year, and I just love that we're filling a massive hole, a massive need, really, in the charismatic space. Historically, you haven't seen a tons of kids' books, so I'm glad that DI is at the forefront of helping to fill that gap. So, in terms of this project, obviously, I've been hearing about it a lot for the last year and a half, but it was out of the box. Christian had to go to bat to pitch it and sell it to our team. I'd love just to hear, how did you guys meet, and how did this project start to take shape? Because it was out of the box, but I know all of us are so glad that we did it.
I love that. You mentioned Christian. That's where it begins. Christian Raffetto, who I just have to give a huge shout out to at Destiny Image. What a wonderful guy. We first met because I speak every week at a different fellowship here in Colorado Springs, and I record my talks in case our friends are out of town that week. And So a friend gave Christian my podcast, which is just really my giving a talk week by week. And Christian listened to a couple that happened to be in this very imaginative kind of firsthand encounter style. And I got a call from him. I was driving my truck and I got a call. Hi, I'm Christian. I don't know you, but I know Tommy and I'd like to know you. So we became friends on a phone call. And he just said, who the heck are you? And I said, well, I don't know. Who are you? And we became friends just talking about the Lord, talking about our kids, our wives. So that's how it started. And then months later, Christian said to me one day, I dream of a new children's Bible. And he kind of pitched me on, here's how I think it should go. And he would tell you right off the bat, I said, the way you just said that sounds so boring to me, Christian. I am not interested in the way you described that. And he laughed. He said, okay, fine. If you think that's boring, what would you do? And I said, well, I think I would put children, their parents in the firsthand setting. I would try and make it imaginative so it's like an encounter. And he said, write a chapter. So I wrote a chapter, sent it over, and that was how the journey began. And from there, we wrote 20 chapters up that we were really proud of, and then started talking about illustrators and got this, gosh, I can't go on enough about Kevin and Kristen How to Show. I think they're the best illustrators in the country, and we got them for this Bible. So that's been going on for the last about year, and here we are. Tomorrow is actually the day the whole thing launches. So that's been the whole journey.
And one of the things I want to be sure we make mention of, and if you follow Destiny Image and what we're publishing, you are seeing more projects that are released simultaneously in multiple languages. And one of the great things about this children's Bible is we're releasing it in English and Spanish right out of the gate, and it's just been fun to talk to different friends that I have who they may not be primarily Spanish speaking, but they have family members who are, and so when you show them something like this, and then you let them know it's also available in Spanish at release time, they're crazy excited because yeah, you can find children's Bibles out there, but to find a Spanish children's Bible that's of this caliber and this high of quality, that can be fairly hard to do. So English and Spanish right out of the gate. So if you have friends who are Spanish speaking, this would be a fantastic Christmas gift to give to them, to share with their children. I think they're going to love it. In terms of what's different, everybody's like, I've got a children's Bible or a kid's Bible. What's different? Like what are, you already talked about kind of the perspective of immersing your readers into this story, but where are you going? How are you handling things that's just a little bit different than what we've seen in previous offerings? Maybe even if you want to, you could contrast it with the Jesus Storybook Bible a little bit, because I think that's one that most of my audience is going to be familiar with it because most of us have read that worn out the one that we had that we've read to our kids through the years. So, how are you approaching things maybe a little bit differently?
Absolutely. When Christian and I first started talking, we described to each other our experience. In fact, we talked first and foremost about the Jesus Storybook Bible, which we both of us love. And by the way, we're not out there trying to compete with them. We love that Bible. The difference between ours and that one takes you from Genesis to Revelation. So you touch almost every single aspect of the entirety of the Old and New Testament. Christian and I really felt that what that Bible didn't have quite as much of as we wanted was just pure narrative from the four Gospels. Because you have the Old Testament is a lot longer than the New Testament. So we decided we would love for this to be strictly in the four Gospels using 20 narratives that are, for us adults, fairly well known. And yet we wanted it to be for children as if they'd never read it before, because it's in sort of this new vantage point, kind of a new, at times sort of poetic cadence that just draws them in. And especially some of those page turns that we are so excited about kids, just being kind of blown away when they lock eyes with him on the page. I would say the other thing that I really feel passionate about this product is, I have children who are 13, 11, and 7. So when I started writing, I think they were 5, 9, and 11 or so. I really wanted it to hit all three of them, but in different ways. So I think the way that it's written is very childlike. It's very grabbing. It's imaginative. But there's elements to how it's told that are quite haunting. And I was just reading it last night to our youngest, who's 7. And Jenny, my wife, was really quite moved just as she was listening. As we went back over a chapter, she'd heard it 5 times, but it hit her in a different way this time because it's kind of grown up, even though it's for children. So those are a couple things that hit me about the differences. But I'm biased. I love it.
Well, we love it too. We're also a little bit biased, but I think in terms of things hitting us different ways, I feel like we see that anytime we read scripture where, we're in different life circumstances, we're walking through different things, and we might read a passage or a chapter that we've maybe read hundreds and hundreds of times, and it just speaks to us in a different way because of where we are in life, what we're going to. God's word is always fresh, and even in a children's Bible, that can apply there as well. I want to make sure we talk about the discussion aspect. So obviously, you get to read this with your kids or grandkids, but at the end of each close of the story, if you will, there's a section called "Let's Talk About It." So in terms of those questions, what were you hoping to draw out from the kids in terms of discussion?
Well, I think what's something that should be pointed out that's really cool. The let's talk about it questions actually came from Bill Johnson. So I think that's exciting to know. I
Yes.
work through the narratives, and it's pretty cool for our viewers to think, man, Bill Johnson was thinking of me when he wrote these let's talk about it questions. Part of the heart of that was for me and for lots of my contemporaries, sometimes the hardest thing with your children is not only to read them a Bible account, it's to really talk about it in a way that draws their hearts in so that it's like we're discipling them. We're helping them to grow and become a more mature follower of Jesus. So I love those questions because they're, again, childlike, but they're kind of deep. And so I imagine my own kids were going to bed at night. If we read that chapter, had an encounter, and then had two or three questions that really went after both their heart and their mind, I think we're helping them to grow day by day deeper in the Lord. So that's why I love the questions. And quite frankly, let's be real, they're from Bill Johnson. How cool is that? I mean, he's such a brilliant, wonderful man. So to think of that coming from him couldn't be better.
Yeah, I actually remember when we met up with Bill in Colorado earlier this summer. That was probably one of the most theologically engaging discussions I've had with Bill. I mean, I've had many a meal with him through the years, but I remember in terms of this project and the discussion that just came up around the breakfast table, we went deep. And so I feel like some of that spills over into how he handled the questions that you're going to encounter in the book. In terms of the stories, the accounts that you chose to put in the Bible, obviously there's more than 20 stories you could have fit into this. How did you choose? How did you select which stories were appropriate for this first go around? Because you never know, we might do more of these sorts of books in the future.
Yeah. Well, one of my biggest things when I'm speaking and teaching places, I always say to people, you should be reading in the Gospels every day. If you're not reading in the Gospels every day, you're not doing it right. We have to encounter him for ourselves every day. So I am an ardent student of reading about Jesus directly in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then over the years, like I said, with Young Life at our church, I get to talk about it a lot too. So these 20 are ones that I have spoken about before and that maybe I've imagined the most. So I felt like as I got going and writing out an outline, I thought, oh, I would love to do the baptism of Jesus. I would love to do the wedding at Cana. I would love to do the calm of the storm. So it was a little bit down to these are the ones I just have fallen in love with over the last many years. And well, why not start there? And hopefully let's do a volume two. I'll do another 20. So that was kind of how these ones got chosen.
And in terms of you caught my attention using the word imaginative. In terms of your writing, the artwork, just the collaboration between everybody involved. Talk to us a little bit about the creativity and the synergy of bringing all this together. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So as I was writing, obviously in my own mind, I was kind of blocking out scenes. I had notes that I'd made to myself. I imagined page turns even. Oh, that would be so good if we could turn the page right there. So I made notes to myself. Christian and I would read back and forth to each other and imagine the flow and when would we want to move from this to that. Well, then from there, he and I made notes on, at the time, probably about 75 illustrations that we just thought those are the ones. We made pretty serious notes about them and then met with Kevin and Christian and put all those in front of them and just said, okay, on this page, imagine this, this, and this. But the cool part was they are so gifted. From there, it was fairly hands off because we just said, you guys have a vision. We believe in your eye for detail. Take over. And so I got to tell you, Shaun, every Friday for that, I don't know, 9 months, I would get on every Friday a chapter of sketches. And that was like Christmas. You'd just be like, oh, wow, like this is glorious. And then you'd say, okay, I like this. Maybe just turn his head a little bit more this way. And then the next Friday, you get final renderings. And that was like double Christmas because then it was all in color. Oh, so that's been the process. And then, of course, finally we had to wed it all together with paginations and getting just the right amount of text per page. But I'm really thrilled with the way it turned out and how it's looking and how it feels in your hand. It's very exciting.
And now I'm going to ask you what probably will be the hardest question of the interview. In terms of the 20 different stories, you consider the writing, the artwork. I'm curious which one is your favorite. And if you talk to any author or creative person, which book is your favorite? Which album is your favorite, or which song on that album? They're like, but I all kind of like them because they're all sort of my kids. But for you, if you were limited to pick only one, which story in the book just it came together in a way that maybe even exceeded the vision you had for it?
It's actually easy. It's easy. My favorite is called The Storm and the Hush. And it's the classic calming of the storm narrative. In fact, I taught on this yesterday at our church fellowship. I love that particular chapter because I think it's well written. Thank you. But I love it maybe the most because on the last two pages, on the left hand page, the storm is happening, and on the right hand page, he just said, "Hush, be still." And so it's side by side, beautiful nighttime sky, crazy on one side, peaceful as can be on the other. And I think that side by sideness is going to show kids so much of what they need to know about the nature of who Jesus is, because he is this powerful over this storm. And look what he did. And when I read that one to my own children, I'm always goosebumps. And it's a lot of it's down to that illustration, Darren. So beautiful.
And in terms of the reader takeaway impact, when you think of families sitting down and going through this, like how do you hope you're impacting their discussion? How do you hope you're impacting their thinking? Like what I guess I might put it. What does success look like for you with how people engage with this resource?
I used the word before. I think the word haunting. I want kids and their parents to not be able to stop thinking about him. I want them to, they're going to bed at 8 o'clock, they read a chapter, and I want them to be falling asleep, fighting off sleep because they still want to be thinking about him. I want them when they're 40 years old, years from now, to still kind of be picturing him a little bit how we've painted him in this book. I really want it to be a substantive foundation for their own encounter so that when they learn to read for themselves, that they read the gospels imaginatively. So I just hope it's a springboard. I hope it almost kind of never leaves their thoughts. And I just hope that it makes them hungry for more of who he is day by day. So those are my real dreams in it.
And one of the things that has been great about this project is I know you and Christian have been hard at work, intentionally creating some community around the book. And so tell us a little bit about, you guys have a Facebook page, you've got a podcast, you've got a website. Where are some of the places we can connect with you guys to have conversation and find out more about this project?
Absolutely. So yeah, we months and months ago, we actually started recording these chapters, and then Christian so beautifully put some sound to them and made it feel like you really were in the middle of it. And we started just grabbing a community of people who were listening. We started recording some midweek discussions. So all those got posted at YouTube, and those podcasts are on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can go and check us out at momentswithjesusproject.com, where we post all that stuff. Instagram, there's little snippets of the book and illustrations. And we have an amazing launch team too. I want to give a shout out to them. And they've been reaching out to their family and friends and making sure lots of people are hearing. So we meet week by week and talk about it and pray together. And so there's a lot of ways you can encounter this project and this book. But we're just grateful to be on the journey with a lot of people all over the world, really. It's exciting.
Yes, it is indeed exciting. I feel like we've set the bar higher now for every future Destiny Image Kids product. So I'm excited to see where we go from here. Like we do with every episode, we'll make it easy. We'll have links in the show notes to the different community places that we've mentioned. We'll have links to places where you can pick up your very own copy of this brand new book. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Eugene Luning. Once again, our book today was The Moments with Jesus Encounter Bible, 20 immersive stories from the four Gospels. And Eugene, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Appreciate your time.